You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your Security Plus certification journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. A threat vector is best understood as the path or channel an attacker uses to deliver their attack. Just as a burglar might choose to enter through a front door, back door, or window, cyber adversaries select vectors that give them access to a system or data. The vector itself may not be inherently malicious. Email, websites, or USB drives are ordinary tools, but when manipulated, they become carriers of risk. Recognizing threat vectors is essential because they represent the specific ways an attacker turns intent into action. Without clearly identifying the path, defenders cannot effectively block, monitor, or respond to hostile attempts. The concept of an attack surface expands this perspective by considering all the possible points that could be exploited. It is the sum of every vector, entry, or vulnerability that exposes an organization to risk. For a large company, this surface may include thousands of endpoints, dozens of applications, and multiple third-party connections. Even small organizations have wider surfaces than they realize, including employee devices, cloud accounts, and internet-facing services. The larger the surface, the more opportunities attackers have to probe and exploit. Managing risk begins with acknowledging how broad this surface truly is. Identifying the attack surface is a prerequisite for effective defense, because one cannot protect what one does not know exists. Hidden systems, forgotten user accounts, or shadow IT devices all expand the surface silently. When these overlooked points are exposed, they become appealing targets for attackers precisely because they are less likely to be monitored or patched. Mapping the attack surface is like conducting a thorough home inspection before setting up locks and alarms. By cataloging every potential entry point, defenders create the foundation for prioritizing which areas require the most urgent attention and investment. Common threat vectors illustrate the many paths adversaries exploit. Network vectors include insecure protocols, exposed services, and poorly protected communication channels. Application vectors arise from flaws in web or software design, such as injection vulnerabilities. Human vectors exploit psychology through phishing, credential reuse, or social engineering. Supply chain vectors leverage third-party vendors or software dependencies to infiltrate indirectly. Finally, physical vectors involve unauthorized access to devices or facilities. Each of these vectors represents a unique challenge. Together, they show that cyber defense must be holistic, addressing both technology and the people and processes that surround it. It is also important to distinguish between remote and local attack vectors. Remote vectors allow attackers to exploit systems from a distance, often through the internet, without direct access. Examples include exploiting exposed services or sending phishing emails. Local vectors require physical or logical proximity, such as inserting a malicious USB drive into a workstation or exploiting vulnerabilities once already inside the network. Both types matter. Remote vectors tend to scale more widely, while local vectors often carry higher impact because they bypass perimeter defenses. Defenders must anticipate both forms and tailor protections accordingly. Interconnected systems have greatly increased exposure to threat vectors. In earlier eras, an organization might defend a handful of on-premises systems. Today, networks span multiple sites, cloud services, mobile devices, and IoT endpoints. Each connection introduces new potential vulnerabilities. An attacker no longer needs to strike the primary target directly. They may instead compromise a lightly protected device that has indirect access. The broader and more interconnected the environment, the harder it becomes to fully secure. This reality makes managing exposure not just a technical challenge, but an organizational priority that spans every department. Entry points are the practical details of how attackers exploit the surface. Open ports on servers may reveal unnecessary services running, while exposed APIs can inadvertently grant broader access than intended. Misconfigurations, such as leaving cloud storage buckets open to the public, serve as common entry points. Each of these is like a door accidentally left unlocked, waiting to be discovered. Attackers often rely on automated scans to find these opportunities. Because of this, defenders must view every entry point not just as a technical setting, but as an invitation that could be noticed and exploited at scale. Default credentials and misconfiguration deserve particular emphasis as vectors because they remain among the most exploited weaknesses. Systems shipped with simple usernames and passwords, like admin or 1234, often remain unchanged after deployment. Similarly, features left on by default may expose unnecessary functionality. Attackers know these defaults and actively seek them out. From their perspective, it is like having a master key that opens many locks. Organizations that fail to harden their configurations effectively hand attackers the means to walk right in. Recognizing this, secure configuration becomes a fundamental defensive principle. Asset inventory plays a crucial role in mapping the attack surface. Without a clear picture of every device, application, and service in use, organizations cannot realistically defend themselves. Inventory should include not only traditional servers and endpoints but also cloud instances, mobile devices, and IoT hardware. This inventory must be continuously updated, as new assets are constantly added and old ones retired. For defenders, inventory is the blueprint of the environment. It provides the visibility needed to identify where the surface begins and ends, ensuring no blind spots are left for attackers to exploit. Segmentation is a proven way to reduce the effective attack surface. By dividing networks into smaller zones and restricting communication between them, organizations limit the reach of any single compromise. Even if an attacker gains access to one segment, they cannot easily pivot into others. This principle mirrors physical security, where buildings are designed with separate locked areas to contain intrusions. Segmentation not only reduces exposure, but also improves monitoring, as unusual traffic between segments stands out. In this way, segmentation transforms a sprawling, complex surface into smaller, more manageable pieces for defense. Reducing the attack surface is not a one-time project but an ongoing effort. Every software update, system deployment, or new vendor relationship has the potential to expand exposure. What is secure today may be vulnerable tomorrow, as configurations drift or technologies age. Organizations must adopt processes that continually reassess and minimize their surface, such as routine scanning, patching, and configuration reviews. This requires not just technical diligence but also organizational discipline. Treating surface reduction as a living, ongoing process ensures defenses evolve alongside the ever-changing environment attackers seek to exploit. Vectors and surfaces form the starting point for all mitigation strategies. Before deploying advanced detection tools or response playbooks, defenders must first understand how attackers enter and where the environment is exposed. Without this foundation, security measures risk being misaligned or incomplete. A vulnerability scanner, for example, is only effective if the scope of assets is fully known. Likewise, phishing defenses are only meaningful when paired with awareness of how attackers use email as a vector. By grounding defense in vectors and surfaces, organizations ensure their strategies rest on a clear, logical understanding of risk. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Network vectors are some of the most common and visible ways attackers gain entry. Open services such as unsecured FTP or Telnet connections create opportunities for exploitation. Weak protocols lacking encryption, like older versions of HTTP or SNMP, can expose sensitive traffic to interception or tampering. Exposed management interfaces, including those used to administer routers or servers, are particularly dangerous when left unprotected on the Internet. These points represent the front doors of digital environments. For attackers, scanning for open ports or outdated services is a routine first step. For defenders, monitoring, securing, and minimizing exposed services is central to protecting the network surface. Application vectors are equally significant, exploiting weaknesses in the way software is written and deployed. Classic examples include injection attacks, where unvalidated input is used to manipulate queries to databases, or insecure deserialization, where crafted objects trigger unintended code execution. Session management flaws, such as weak cookies or improper handling of authentication tokens, provide further openings. These vectors are dangerous because they often bypass network-level protections and directly target business logic. In practice, application vulnerabilities are among the most exploited because web applications are so widely accessible. Recognizing these risks requires secure coding practices, regular testing, and vigilant patching. For defenders, application security highlights the importance of thinking beyond firewalls and perimeter defenses. Even with strong network controls, vulnerable applications can provide attackers with direct access to sensitive systems. Addressing these vectors requires collaboration between developers, testers, and security teams. Secure development lifecycles, code reviews, and automated scanning tools all help to identify and reduce risks. Just as network vectors demand constant monitoring, application vectors demand continuous improvement in coding standards and practices. Understanding their role in expanding the attack surface helps organizations see why software hygiene is as critical as network hygiene. Human vectors remind us that technology alone is not the only path to compromise. Phishing remains the most common example, where attackers trick individuals into clicking malicious links or opening infected attachments. Social engineering techniques go further, manipulating trust to gain credentials or physical access. Credential reuse, where employees recycle the same passwords across multiple systems, also provides an easy path for attackers. These human-centered vectors succeed because they exploit psychology rather than technology. Training and awareness become critical defenses, but even well-informed individuals may slip under pressure or distraction. Recognizing the human factor is essential for comprehensive defense. Defenders must appreciate that human vectors are resilient because they adapt. Attackers study language, culture, and habits to craft convincing lures. Phishing emails now often appear personalized, referencing current events or even organizational projects. Social engineering by phone or in person can manipulate authority or urgency. These tactics remind us that the human mind is part of the attack surface. Security awareness campaigns, multi-factor authentication, and regular simulations reduce but cannot eliminate this vector. The goal is not perfection but resilience, ensuring that mistakes by individuals do not cascade into catastrophic breaches. Supply chain vectors extend the attack surface into third parties, contractors, and vendors. Attackers increasingly recognize that infiltrating a supplier can yield access to many downstream organizations. This could involve compromising third-party software updates, abusing vendor credentials, or exploiting outsourced service providers. The high-profile supply chain breaches of recent years illustrate how damaging this vector can be, spreading malicious code or access across numerous organizations simultaneously. Because supply chains are interconnected and trust-based, they provide attackers with leverage far beyond what direct attacks might achieve. For defenders, managing these risks requires extending security visibility beyond organizational boundaries. Addressing supply chain vectors requires rigorous vendor assessment and continuous monitoring. Organizations must ensure that partners follow strong security practices, apply timely patches, and restrict access appropriately. Contracts should include security obligations, and regular audits can help verify compliance. Attackers know that weak links in the chain are often overlooked, making them attractive targets. By recognizing supply chain risk as part of the broader attack surface, defenders shift from an internal-only mindset to one that acknowledges interdependence. Trust in digital ecosystems must be verified, not assumed. This proactive stance is vital to reducing exposure from this growing vector. Physical vectors remain relevant, despite the emphasis on digital threats. Unauthorized access to facilities can allow attackers to steal devices, plant malicious hardware, or tamper with systems. Removable media, such as USB drives, present another enduring risk as they can carry malware directly into otherwise isolated environments. Device theft, whether laptops or mobile phones, can expose sensitive data if not properly encrypted. These vectors remind us that cybersecurity and physical security are inseparable. Locks, cameras, and access controls work alongside encryption and authentication to secure the full environment. Neglecting the physical dimension leaves gaps attackers can exploit. Defenders must maintain awareness that physical vectors are often underestimated. For instance, an attacker posing as a delivery worker might gain access to restricted spaces. Similarly, misplaced or stolen devices without disk encryption can result in major data breaches. Training employees to recognize social engineering attempts in person is as important as teaching them to spot phishing online. By securing both the digital and physical realms, organizations reduce the blended attack surface. A holistic defense recognizes that information is valuable regardless of how it is accessed, and attackers will exploit the easiest available route. IoT and embedded device vectors pose unique challenges. These devices often ship with limited security features, default credentials, and minimal ability for updates. Attackers exploit them to form botnets, spy on environments, or gain indirect access to networks. Because IoT devices are pervasive, from industrial sensors to home smart devices, they expand the attack surface dramatically. Each new connected device is another potential entry point, often overlooked in traditional security planning. The motivation for attackers is clear. Compromise one weak device, and they may gain a foothold into much larger systems. Managing this vector is increasingly urgent as adoption grows. The management of IoT vectors is difficult because devices are diverse, widespread, and often beyond centralized control. Patching may be unavailable or inconsistent, and visibility is often poor. Defenders must implement strategies such as network segmentation, restricting device privileges, and monitoring for unusual behavior. As with other vectors, inventory plays a vital role. Without knowing which IoT devices are connected, defenders cannot secure them. IoT challenges remind us that the attack surface is not static. It expands with every technological shift, requiring constant adaptation. Failure to address these vectors leaves significant blind spots in organizational defenses. Continuous scanning and testing are crucial for discovering new vectors before attackers do. Automated tools can probe networks, applications, and configurations for weaknesses, identifying open services or misconfigurations. Penetration testing adds human insight, revealing complex chains of vulnerabilities that tools may miss. These practices ensure that defenders maintain awareness of their evolving attack surface. Without continuous assessment, organizations risk becoming complacent, allowing their surface to expand unnoticed. Attackers are always scanning, and defenders must match their persistence. Proactive testing shifts security from reactive defense to anticipatory strategy, reducing exposure before it can be exploited. Threat modeling helps prioritize which parts of the attack surface to reduce first. By considering likely adversaries, their motivations, and their capabilities, defenders can determine which vectors are most attractive targets. For instance, a hospital might focus on protecting human vectors through phishing awareness, while a financial institution emphasizes network segmentation. Threat modeling transforms broad inventories into actionable strategies, aligning defensive resources with realistic risks. Without prioritization, organizations may waste effort defending low-value areas while leaving high-risk vectors exposed. Motivation and opportunity inform these decisions, making threat modeling central to effective surface reduction. Automated tools and manual reviews both have strengths and limits in managing vectors. Tools provide scale, scanning thousands of systems quickly for common flaws. However, they may miss nuanced issues or false positives that require human judgment. Manual reviews, such as code audits or configuration checks, bring depth and insight but cannot match automation for breadth. A balanced approach leverages both, combining the efficiency of machines with the expertise of humans. Understanding these trade-offs ensures defenders build realistic, sustainable processes for managing attack surfaces. Neither approach alone is sufficient, but together they offer comprehensive coverage. Secure default configurations are one of the most powerful ways to minimize exposed vectors. Systems should be deployed with only necessary services enabled, strong credentials required, and unnecessary features disabled. Unfortunately, many products ship with insecure defaults that prioritize convenience over security. Defenders must take responsibility for hardening these systems before they go live. By making security the starting point rather than an afterthought, organizations reduce their attack surface dramatically. Secure defaults embody the principle of prevention, closing doors before attackers can even see them. This practice shifts the balance toward defenders by reducing easy wins for adversaries. Managing attack surfaces ultimately requires cross-functional coordination. Security teams cannot succeed in isolation. They must work with network administrators, developers, HR, facilities, and third-party vendors. Each group owns a portion of the surface, and only together can they secure the whole environment. This collaboration ensures that policies, technology, and culture align to minimize risk. By treating the attack surface as a shared responsibility, organizations transform defense into an integrated effort. Cross-functional cooperation acknowledges that attackers look for the weakest link, regardless of who owns it. Effective defense strengthens every link in the chain. In summary, threat vectors and attack surfaces represent the tactical focus for reducing vulnerabilities. By understanding how attackers enter vectors and where exposure exists, surfaces, defenders can design targeted mitigations. Each vector, from networks to humans to supply chains, requires distinct strategies, but all contribute to the larger surface. Continuous scanning, threat modeling, secure defaults, and cross-functional collaboration make reduction achievable. While total elimination of exposure is impossible, proactive management greatly diminishes risk. For defenders, vectors and surfaces are not abstract concepts, but the foundation of everyday security practice, guiding priorities and shaping resilient strategies. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.